I think the moment I knew I was done was quiet. No yelling, no big argument, no smoking gun. Just the sound of the front door closing behind her and the silence that settled in its place. Emily had left that morning for a team retreat in Portland, 3 days with her marketing department at some luxury hotel with conference rooms, wine bars, and spa robes. Corporate therapy disguised as productivity. She kissed the kids, gave me a half-hearted hug, and rolled her suitcase to the car without looking back. The same suitcase I bought her for our 15th anniversary. I stood in the doorway, holding my coffee, and watched her drive off like she was escaping. It wasn't the first time she'd gone on one of these trips. They'd become more frequent in the past 2 years. Retreats, conferences, urgent client dinners. Always some excuse to stay out late or get away entirely. I used to believe they were legit. Or maybe I wanted to believe. But that morning, something inside me snapped, and I couldn't pretend anymore. The coffee was cold. I didn't even notice until I took another sip and grimaced. I dumped it in the sink and stood there with my hands braced on the counter, listening to nothing. No footsteps. No clatter of plates or the kids yelling upstairs. Even the dog had wandered back to the couch. The quiet pressed against me in a way it never had before. That's when I realized I couldn't do this anymore. I couldn't keep waiting for her to come home, really come home. Not just physically walk through the door and toss her keys in the bowl, but be here. With me. With the kids. With the version of herself she used to be before everything got so distant. We used to laugh. We used to fight too, but at least that meant we were engaged. I couldn't remember the last real conversation we'd had that wasn't about schedules or bills or logistics. I tried. God knows I tried. I showed up. I took care of things. I adjusted. I told myself I was being a good husband by giving her space, by not pressing too hard when she said she was just tired or stressed from work. But space turned into a canyon. And somewhere along the way, I stopped being her person and started being her roommate. I wasn't blind to the signs. I noticed the way she smiled at her phone more than she smiled at me. The way she always seemed relieved when I didn't ask questions. I noticed how she stopped sitting next to me on the couch, or how she flinched, subtly but still, whenever I reached for her hand. There were late-night Zoom meetings that seemed to stretch past midnight, but only when I wasn't around. A new passcode on her phone. A new perfume she never wore around me. I noticed it all. But I didn't say anything. I kept telling myself that maybe I was just paranoid. That maybe all marriages get like this after enough time. That as long as the kids were doing okay, it wasn't worth blowing everything up. I told myself love wasn't supposed to be fireworks after 20 years. It was supposed to be steady, reliable, quiet. But I think I mistook quiet for emptiness. When she drove away that morning, I didn't feel the usual anxiety. No ache in my chest, no desperation to hear from her later that night. I felt calm, cold almost, like my body finally stopped bracing for a blow that never came. I wasn't angry, not then. I was just done. I was done being the guy who made excuses for why his wife didn't look at him anymore. Done pretending I didn't see what was right in front of me. Done pretending I was happy with scraps of affection and the occasional breadcrumb of attention. Jay wandered downstairs around 9, rubbing his eyes, still in the t-shirt he'd fallen asleep in. "Mom already gone?" he mumbled, heading to the fridge. "Yeah," I said. "Left about an hour ago." He didn't say anything, just poured himself some orange juice and scrolled his phone. Ella followed not long after, full of questions about pancakes and cartoons and if she could use glitter glue on her school project. And there it was, the normal, the routine, the quiet beat of family life without her. And it felt better than okay. It felt manageable. Later that afternoon, while the kids were watching a movie and the dog snored under the coffee table, I opened a new browser tab and typed homes for rent near Tacoma. It wasn't a dramatic gesture. I didn't even think about it. My fingers moved like they already knew the way. I found a 3-bedroom house on a quiet street with a little yard and a front porch that looked like peace. It was available immediately. I filled out the application. When the confirmation email came through, I just stared at the screen. My hands weren't even shaking. No panic. No doubt. Just this strange, heavy clarity. I was really going to do this. I was going to leave. Not because I hated her. Not because I wanted revenge. But because I had finally accepted the truth. She had already left me a long time ago. She just hadn't packed a bag yet. I didn't tell the kids right away. I wasn't sure how. Not yet. But I knew I'd have to. I wasn't going to be that guy who disappeared in the middle of the night and left them wondering. They deserved more than that. They deserved honesty. They deserved a version of me who wasn't bitter and drained all the time. I didn't know what Emily was doing in Portland. Maybe she really was sitting in a conference room listening to someone drone on about branding. Maybe she was at a wine bar laughing too hard at someone else's joke. I didn't care. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't sitting around waiting for her to come back and notice me. I was done waiting. I was ready to move. By the time Sunday rolled around, Emily was still posting pictures, wine glasses, blurry group selfies, a shot of her pedicure with a caption about self-care and synergy. It was always the same crew. I recognized a few of her co-workers from company parties. Megan with the aggressive laugh, Brian who always found a way to mention his CrossFit schedule. They looked like they were having the time of their lives while I was knee-deep in cardboard boxes. The kids were confused at first. I didn't say much right away. I wasn't sure how. I figured I'd wait until the car was packed, until I had something real to show them. I didn't want to unload a storm of feelings on their heads before they had somewhere safe to land. So when I told them we were helping get the house ready, they believed me. Jay rolled his eyes and asked if we were flipping it or something. Ella wanted to know if we could eat pizza on the floor. I said yes to both. In truth, the decision had been made days earlier. I'd signed the lease on the Tacoma place late Friday night after the kids had gone to bed. It was fast, maybe reckless, but when I walked through the empty rooms on Saturday morning, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. No framed photos mocking me from the mantel. No stale silence pulsing between walls that once held laughter. Just a quiet, blank space that felt like possibility. I rented a truck that afternoon. The kind you see parked in driveways on Saturdays with a ramp and a dolly rattling around in the back. I told Jay I needed help moving a few things. He grunted but followed me out anyway, earbuds already in. Ella brought her stuffed animals for the ride. One by one, we boxed up what mattered. Not everything, just the essentials. Clothes, school stuff, some kitchen gear, and the kids' favorite things. I didn't bother touching Emily's side of the closet. Her perfume bottles stayed. Her jewelry box, too. The bed could stay. I didn't want to bring anything that still smelled like her. I took the dog's leash, my records, and a chair I liked sitting in when the house was quiet. That was enough. It was evening by the time everything was loaded. Jay finally put two and two together when he saw we weren't just hauling boxes, we were leaving. His face went pale. He stood in the garage, arms crossed, eyes darting between me and the truck. Wait, are we actually moving? I nodded slowly, trying to keep my voice calm. Yeah, we are. He didn't say anything for a while. Just stared, like I'd spoken another language. Ella, bless her, still didn't get it. She climbed into the front seat next to the dog, singing to herself while hugging a half-packed backpack. I climbed in behind the wheel and took a long breath before pulling out of the driveway. I didn't look back. The new house was smaller, but it felt more solid. Maybe because it was mine. Ours. The kids helped unpack, kind of. Ella immediately claimed the bedroom with the view of the street. Jay set up his desk in the corner of his new room and plugged in his gaming PC like nothing happened. The dog sniffed every corner of the house, then collapsed in a sunbeam like he'd been there his whole life. We ate pizza on the floor that night, like Ella had hoped. No plates. No expectations. Just the three of us and the dog, surrounded by half-open boxes and the hum of a space heater. Jay was quiet. I expected him to be. 16 is a hard age to process anything, let alone a nuclear family shift. But he didn't yell. He didn't demand answers. I think he just needed time. Maybe he had already known, in some unconscious way, that things weren't right. Kids are perceptive like that. They always know before we want them to. Ella asked when Mom was coming. I told her gently that she'd be staying at the other house for now. That we needed space. She nodded slowly and went back to drawing a rainbow on a cardboard box. I think she was trying to make it look like home. I think I was too. I sent Emily one message before I turned off my phone. It was short. No punctuation. Just an address. For words, we're not coming back. I don't know what I expected. Panic? Anger? A barrage of texts? But she didn't reply. Not right away. I watched the phone for an hour. Nothing. Eventually, I silenced it and left it face down on the table. If she wanted answers, she could find them here. That night, after the kids went to bed, I sat alone in the kitchen, listening to the pipes creak and the wind scrape against the windows. I poured a glass of whiskey, not to forget, but to mark it. This moment. The first day of something else. Not better, not worse. Just real. The truth is, I didn't know where this would lead. I wasn't looking that far ahead yet. All I knew was that staying in that house, her house, was killing something in me a little more every day. And I couldn't afford to let that happen anymore. Not for the kids. Not for myself. Maybe I'd explain it all to them eventually, when the words stopped catching in my throat. When the pain had a little more shape to it. For now, I just needed to be the guy who showed up. Who made dinner. Who remembered where the clean towels were. Who didn't flinch at the sound of the front door. Because whatever Emily was doing in Portland, whoever she was pretending to be in that polished, wine-drunk version of her life, I had stopped waiting for her to choose us again. We had already chosen ourselves. The message I sent her was cold. Not cruel, not angry, just final. I typed the address, added 4 words, and hit send before I could second-guess it. We're not coming back. No explanation, no drama. Let her sit with that. She didn't reply. Sunday came and went. Rain tapped at the windows all day, the kind of gray drizzle that made everything feel suspended. The kids kept busy with unpacking and Mario Kart. I made pancakes for dinner, because it felt like the kind of thing you do when everything else is upside down. We laughed for the first time in what felt like years. Not forced. Not polite. Just laughed. Emily didn't call. Didn't text. Didn't even hit me with a, "What the hell?" Nothing. Until 9:13 p.m. One bubble. One message. "Where are the kids?" I stared at it for a full minute. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I thought about typing something sharp, something that would pierce. Instead, I put the phone back on the counter and walked away. Let her sit in that silence too. The next message came 20 minutes later. Then another. Then another. They got longer, more frantic. The shift from confusion to panic was visible in the way her punctuation disintegrated. "Tom, what is going on? Is this some kind of sick joke? I'm calling the police if you don't answer me. Please." Eventually, I replied with a simple, "We're safe. We're together. You have the address." Then I turned my phone off for the night. She showed up the next morning. I knew she would. I didn't tell the kids she was coming, didn't want to prime them for it. Jay was in his room, headphones on, clicking away at his keyboard. Ella was drawing in the living room with the dog curled beside her. I saw Emily through the window first, standing out on the porch, hair wet from the rain, still wearing the same coat from the Instagram picture she'd posted 2 days earlier with the caption #retreatvibes. She looked unmoored. I opened the door before she could knock. She didn't bring her suitcase. She didn't bring anything at all. Just her. Her face crumpled the second she saw me. She looked past me, trying to see inside, like she didn't quite believe we were really here. Her mouth opened, maybe to ask something, maybe to apologize, but I cut her off with a quiet shake of my head. She didn't get to lead the conversation this time. I stepped aside just enough for her to see the house. The boxes. The backpacks. Ella's art spread out across the floor. She looked at it all like she was trying to make sense of a dream she didn't remember having. "I just want to talk," she said, her voice cracking. I didn't answer. Not with words. Instead, I stood in the doorway and let the silence answer for me. Jay didn't come downstairs. He knew. I don't know how, but he knew she was here. Maybe he heard the car, or maybe he just felt the same shift I did, that low hum of tension that always seemed to follow Emily into a room lately. Ella peeked out from behind the wall, her eyes wide but unreadable. Emily caught sight of her, tried to smile. "Hi, baby." Ella didn't say anything. She just held her stuffed bear a little tighter and disappeared back into the living room. That one moment, that tiny act of withdrawal from our daughter, gutted her more than anything I could have said. "You can't just take them without telling me," she whispered. "I didn't take anyone," I said. "We left." She blinked. "Tom, I don't understand. You just left the house? With the kids?" "Without. We left the house," I said slowly. "Not you. You left us a long time ago." She looked like she'd been slapped. "That's not fair." I tilted my head. "Isn't it?" She stood there, dripping on the porch, her mascara starting to run. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the urge to comfort her. That was the most painful realization of all. I didn't feel like her husband anymore. I didn't feel responsible for her anymore. I felt like a stranger looking at someone I used to love. "Can I come in?" she asked. I didn't move. "Not right now." The door stayed open just long enough for her to realize that begging wouldn't work. "Not today." So she stood there, fists clenched at her sides, and took it. Took all of it. The silence, the space, the weight of the choices she'd made. She didn't try to barge in. She didn't scream. She just turned around, walked slowly back to her car, and sat there for a long time before driving away. I watched her go from the kitchen window. Not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to see what it looked like when a chapter closed. That night, Ella climbed into my bed without saying anything and fell asleep tucked against my side. Jay didn't ask questions, didn't talk about her at all. Just kept to himself and shut his bedroom door. I knew then that the damage had been done long before we ever packed a box. I just finally acknowledged it. She didn't come back the next day. Or the day after. But her messages kept coming, cluttering my inbox like debris from a wreck I no longer wanted to dig through. At first, they were long, paragraphs of confusion and remorse. She tried every angle. Said she was blindsided. Said she just wanted to talk. Said I was being unfair. Then came the questions. "What are you telling the kids? Do they hate me now? Can we sit down, just the two of us?" When I didn't respond, the messages got shorter. Then angry. Then quiet. But I didn't answer. Not because I was trying to punish her. I just didn't have anything left to say. Wednesday night, Jay came downstairs while I was doing dishes. He stood there in that quiet, awkward way teenage boys do when something heavy is sitting on their chest and they haven't figured out what to do with it. He finally said, "So, is this it?" I dried my hands and looked him in the eye. "What do you mean?" "I mean, we're not going back, right? Not just visiting or something. This is it?" I nodded. "Yeah, this is it." He didn't ask why. Didn't demand details. Just stared at the floor for a minute, then said, "Okay." And that was it. He walked back upstairs. But I stood there for a while longer, the water still running behind me, wondering if that quiet, "okay," was his way of mourning something he'd already lost. The next time Emily came by, it was Thursday evening. Same car. Same coat. Different face. Her eyes were swollen. No makeup. Her hair pulled back in a way I hadn't seen since the early years. Messy, rushed, real. She knocked this time. I opened the door, but only halfway. She didn't try to smile. "Please." I let out a breath. "You can come in for 5 minutes. No scenes. The kids are here." She nodded, already crying. Inside, she stood in the entryway like a guest who didn't know whether to take off her shoes or keep them on. She looked around slowly, at the coats on the hooks, the mismatched dishes, the stacks of homework on the dining table, and I could see it in her eyes, regret and disbelief tangled together. This wasn't supposed to happen. She hadn't expected me to actually leave. Jay didn't come out of his room. I think he heard her voice and made a choice right then not to be part of it. Ella peeked from the hallway, her mouth opening like she might say something. But Emily saw her and whispered, "Hey baby," with the softest crack in her voice. And Ella just blinked at her. No words. No smile. Then she disappeared. Emily turned back to me. "Can I talk to them?" I shook my head. "Not yet. They need time." She flinched like I'd struck her. "Tom, I didn't mean to push you this far." I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "No. You just didn't think I'd ever do anything." Her jaw tightened. That's not fair. Neither is building a life with someone who's already halfway out the door. She sank onto the bench by the window, head in her hands. I messed up. I know I did. But you're acting like I cheated or abandoned them. You didn't have to sleep with anyone to leave us, Emily, I said. You left when you stopped being here. When every trip, every retreat, every night on your phone meant more to you than what we had in this house. She looked up at me, her face wet, her voice raw. I didn't know how far I'd drifted. Of course you didn't, I said quietly. You were too busy enjoying the view. That shut her up. I let the silence hang between us, let her sit in it. After a while, she stood. She looked around again, like she was trying to memorize the shape of the life she'd let unravel. Then she turned to the door. If they ever want to talk to me, I'll be here. Just let them know that, okay? I nodded once. I will. She hesitated like she was about to say more, but then she thought better of it. She walked out the door and didn't look back. This time, I didn't watch her leave. That night, I sat at the edge of my bed, staring at my phone. It was quiet. No new messages. I scrolled back through the old ones, reading the ones that felt like echoes, faint traces of someone trying to patch together a life they'd slowly neglected to death. And I couldn't even feel angry anymore. Just tired. I wasn't proud of what I did. I didn't think I'd won anything. All I had now was a rented house, 2 shell-shocked kids, and the shell of a man who used to believe love could survive anything. But at least I could sleep at night. At least I wasn't pretending anymore. In the quiet hours after midnight, I lay in bed and listened to the rain on the windows. Ella had fallen asleep in a pile of blankets on the couch again. Jay was still up, I think, but he kept his door closed. We were all coping in our own ways. And Emily? She was on the outside now. Not just out of the house, but out of the center. Out of the we. She could visit. She could call. She could beg and cry and rewind all the old lines. But the door that mattered, the one that led to the beating heart of this family, had closed to her. And she was the one who'd walked away from the key. Weeks passed. The texts slowed. Eventually they stopped altogether. Emily didn't show up again. She must have realized that no speech, no apology, no teary reunion scene on the porch was going to undo what had been done. The kids didn't ask about her much. Jay retreated into his world. School, friends, late-night gaming. Ella had more questions, of course, but they came in soft bursts. Why isn't Mom eating dinner with us? Can she still come to my recital? Does she miss us? I answered every one of them honestly, even when it hurt. She does miss you. Yes, you can still see her. No, she didn't stop loving you. But I never pretended. I never sugarcoated. I told them we were figuring out a new way to be a family, and that families could still be real even when they didn't live under one roof. Some nights, after they were asleep, I'd sit on the porch with a beer and let the cold settle into my bones. It helped. The quiet, the distance, the stillness of not being trapped in some endless cycle of hoping she'd look at me like she used to. I had stopped waiting for that version of her to return. She wasn't lost. She had chosen another path, one she probably didn't even realize she was walking until it was too far to turn around. There was a moment about a month in, just a normal Tuesday evening, when I realized I hadn't thought about her all day. Not once. It hit me like a jolt. I was loading the dishwasher, and Jay was telling me something about a project at school, and Ella was humming some ridiculous pop song in the other room, and I realized, this was it. The new normal. And it wasn't so bad. I was still angry sometimes. Still sad. But it didn't sting like it used to. It was just a dull ache in the background, like an old bruise that only hurts if you press down too hard. One afternoon, I found a manila envelope in the mailbox. No return address. Just my name in her handwriting. Inside was a short letter and a folded photo. The 4 of us on a beach in Cannon Beach, summer 3 years ago. Before everything cracked. I barely remembered the moment the photo captured. Ella's hair sticking to her cheeks, Jay throwing sand, me and Emily with our arms around each other, smiling like people who believed in forever. The note was short. Just a page. So, I don't expect you to respond. I know I don't deserve anything from you. But I wanted you to know that I see it now. All of it. How far I drifted. How much I made you carry. I was selfish. I confused being tired with being entitled. I stopped trying. And you, God, you tried. I know that now. Asterisk, I thought the slow fading didn't count as breaking. I thought if I didn't leave, it still meant I was choosing us. But I see now that silence is a kind of leaving too. I left you in every way that mattered. And I'm sorry. I don't want anything from you. Not pity, not another chance. Just forgiveness if you can ever find it. And maybe someday, you'll think of that beach photo and smile instead of ache. Emily asterisk. I stared at the letter for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just felt still. It was too late for forgiveness, maybe. But not for peace. I folded the photo, tucked it into a drawer with the kids' baby books, and left the letter out on the kitchen table. Jay found it first. He didn't say anything. Just read it silently, then placed it back where he found it. That night, while we ate spaghetti and made fun of a terrible movie on TV, I realized something. We were okay. Not perfect. Not healed, necessarily. But okay. We were surviving the fall, and maybe even learning how to fly without her. Eventually, Emily started seeing the kids again. Small visits. Ice cream with Ella. A movie with Jay. I didn't interfere. I didn't poison the well. They deserved to make their own relationship with her, whatever shape it took. She stayed civil. Never crossed boundaries. Never showed up unannounced again. I could see in her face that the guilt hadn't faded, but she didn't make a show of it. That mattered. One evening after she dropped Ella off, she lingered at the door. You've built something here, she said, eyes scanning the house. It's solid. I nodded. It's home. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say more, but then she just gave a soft smile. Take care, Tom. You too, Em. That was it. No big ending. No last kiss. No flames or fireworks. Just two people standing on opposite sides of a closed door, finally learning how to let go. A few months out, the world kept moving. It's strange how life doesn't pause just because yours blew up. The school still sent permission slips. The power bill still showed up. My job still expected me to hit deadlines. It was almost offensive how normal everything looked from the outside. But on the inside, I felt different. Lighter maybe. Sharper. Like someone who'd been underwater too long and finally remembered how to breathe. I took up running again. Started with slow jogs around the neighborhood, just enough to shake the fog off. Jay noticed. He came with me once, didn't say much, but that silence between us felt stronger than all the lectures in the world. Ella drew a picture of the three of us standing in front of the new house. No Emily. Just the three of us and the dog, all smiling like it was the only version of our family that had ever existed. That drawing still sits on the fridge. It's not the life I imagined, but it's the one I chose to fight for. There were moments, late at night, where my mind still wandered. Not out of longing, but curiosity. Did she regret it? Did she replay the slow unraveling the way I sometimes did? That dinner where we barely spoke. The vacation where she spent more time on her phone than with the kids. The nights she turned away from me in bed. I remembered all of it now, crystal clear, like puzzle pieces I'd ignored for too long. But I didn't hate her. Not anymore. Maybe that was the strangest part. I had every right to be bitter, to carry the anger like armor. But I didn't want to. I didn't want my kids to see me become that man. I just wanted peace. So when Ella came home from a visit and said, "Mom made cookies with me today," I smiled. I told her that sounded nice. And I meant it. Letting go wasn't about forgetting. It was about finally choosing myself. One Sunday, Jay knocked on my office door. He didn't usually do that. He'd just barge in or text me from the other room like a typical teenager. But this time, he stood there, hands in his hoodie pocket, looking unsure. "Can I ask you something?" I nodded. "Of course. Do you think you'll ever, date again?" It caught me off guard. Not because I hadn't thought about it, but because I hadn't expected him to think about it. I shrugged. "Maybe. Someday. But right now, I'm focused on you and your sister." He nodded slowly. "Just don't pick someone weird." I laughed for the first time in days. "A real one." "Deal." He smirked and turned to leave. But before he closed the door, he said, "You're a good dad, you know?" It hit me like a punch I didn't see coming. All the doubt, the guilt, the second-guessing, it faded in that moment. I didn't need to be perfect. Spring rolled in quietly. The kind of soft Seattle spring that makes everything smell like earth and beginnings. The rental house didn't feel temporary anymore. The cracks in the driveway, the creaky step on the porch, the uneven patch of grass out back, it all felt like ours. Not borrowed. Not in between. Ours. Ella had a school play. She played a squirrel. Wore ears and everything. When she looked out into the audience and saw me and Jay clapping in the front row, her smile lit up like she'd just won an Oscar. Emily was there too. A few rows back. We nodded at each other. That was it. No small talk. No scene. Just mutual respect or something close to it. After the play, Ella ran up to me, beaming. "Did you see me?" she shouted, and I said, "You stole the show." She did. That night, as I tucked her in, she whispered, "I'm glad you're my dad." No moment in my life had ever felt that solid. Summer came fast that year. I planted tomatoes in the backyard, not because I knew what I was doing, but because it felt like something people do when they're building a life again. Jay got his driver's license. Ella started asking if she could paint her bedroom walls. She picked yellow, like sunshine, she said. Sometimes I'd find one of Emily's things buried in a box I hadn't touched. A scarf, a photo, a handwritten note from years ago. I didn't throw them out. I didn't cling to them either. I just put them in a drawer labeled past and closed it. There's a kind of healing that happens quietly. Not in grand gestures or final confrontations, but in the ordinary moments. A quiet breakfast. A Saturday at the park. A laugh from the back seat. We didn't just survive the fall. We landed.